Hello and welcome to the AAI's first ever virtual site visit with Studio Anish. We're going to be checking out Smithfield House, and they've prepared a video of a walkthrough of the site, and then we'll have questions and answers at the end. So we'll just spend a few minutes waiting for the last stragglers to come in. They've got a slideshow here. I hope you can all see of their projects, recent projects. So we'll save the questions till the end, but feel free to type them in, or we can go one by one afterwards. So keep a note of your question. And welcome. We'll start in 3 minutes. I'd just like to welcome as well, you can probably see them on the screen, Niamh Chambers and Declan Crowley from Studio Anish, from their studio you can see in the background. We thought we wouldn't have too much small talk at the beginning, but if you guys want to talk over some of these lovely images, tell us which projects they are while we're getting started. You're on mute though.
Hi everyone. Yeah, we just have a slideshow of, I guess, some of our completed work and some ongoing projects just running in the background before we get on to the site visit itself. We're going to do a small introduction, just giving you the context and the brief, and then we have a 15-minute recording on site, and then we'll follow that up with a Q&A back here afterwards.
So yeah, that's like we'll talk you through some of the more relevant projects as they come up. This project here is actually a project that we have that's on site at the moment. It's just outside Navan in County Meath, and it's currently nearing completion. They were actually self-building, so it took a lot longer. Then this is a project, that's our Fairview project, which I don't know if you've come across. That was one of our first projects to go on site. So I don't know when that finished. That was 2018, I think. It was a complete refurbishment of your kind of standard terraced red brick Dublin house. Then that's our most recent finished project that we've finished and photographed, I suppose, is a project that's in Dundrum, which we call the tile house, kind of as it's distinctly recognised by the kind of green tiles.
Just realised that these are going by quite quickly. Sorry, we're just letting the last people in to the meeting at the moment. So hopefully now within the next minute or two, we'll be on track for starting.
Yeah, this is our first time doing this kind of online event, so we welcome all your feedback, and we tried to keep the numbers low just so that we can actually have a conversation. So after the video is played, you can unmute yourself and fire any questions. So don't be afraid. There's about 27 people here, so we usually have about 20 or 30 on an actual site visit. Claudia is our site visit officer for the past year, so no PPE required today, but please do bring your bravery as you would on site.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you, Niamh and Declan. You can get started as you like.
Great. Just bear with us a second now, and we will. Great, can everybody see that?
Yes.
I assume you're all muted, but we will commence anyways.
Awesome, yeah. Thanks,
Looks
Niamh.
good. Fire away.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll start from here. So we were approached by, sorry, just, I'm going to have to press pause on this. It's,
Okay, transitions.
apologies.
Oh, we can see it fine there. You don't have to go into presentation mode if you don't need.
Okay. So we might just go like this just to be sure that we're showing the right images. So we were approached by our client a few years ago now. At this stage, he had just purchased a property on Charles Street West, which is located in Smithfield. It's about one street over from the forecourts, and it's just on the north side of the quays, opposite Dublin City Council offices. You can see these two photos. The first one is the view from the quays, and the second is looking back down the street. It's a mid-terraced, early Georgian property, which was 2 floors over an original shop. It had a myriad of uses, but it had a fire in the 1980s where most of the original property was really damaged. And we think that it was used as a spice burger factory up until that point. You can see in the site model that it's a really dense site. There's very little outdoor space available. All the buildings are quite tall in the proximity to it, and they're all kind of overshadowing it quite a bit. The external facade was more or less the only thing that wasn't completely destroyed in the fire. So you can see the Georgian proportions of the windows. Probably could do with a bit of love. It had been pebble dashed, and obviously a lot of work had been done over the years to the shop front. This was the only outdoor space available in the property at the time. It's about 2 meters squared, with some lovely chicken wire over it. So that was a major part of the design, to try and get some outdoor space into the property. This was the ground floor. It had no natural light. The first floor probably worked the best within the building. It was all open plan. Because of the fire gutting it, whoever had it at the time had propped it up with steel beams on each floor. So it was quite a nice space, and there's a generous ceiling height. There was a small kind of kitchen built in, and then there was a really poorly built plywood bathroom out onto the roof. And you can see the top floor, it was all quite poor quality, but the roof itself was in good condition.
So I'm going to talk you through the project brief then. So more or less from the beginning, the client had a clear idea of what they wanted to achieve. So it was a 3-bedroom house. It was 2-bedroom at the start and then became a 3-bedroom house as the design progressed. So the front bedroom on the ground floor is now a bedroom. Basically, living in the city centre, we decided from the outset that we were going to kind of push the living up towards the top floors to get as much solar gains in the project. And then another major factor of the whole design and the brief was to get as much outdoor space into the property as possible. So we opted then for going for the green roof on the top. Initially, the project was going to be carried out in 2 phases. So the design developed in a way with certain restrictions in place that it would possibly be done in 2 phases. But then as we went on, it made more sense to do all the work in one go.
So I guess part of the brief as well was that we'd keep the existing structure. So you can see in this sectional model, there was existing beams, 2 of them on each floor. So we actually had to fit the stairs within those as part of the design brief.
And then all the spaces that were actually existing, as we just showed you earlier, they were all very horizontal. So we wanted to kind of look at a way of connecting the spaces together and making it feel like one house rather than having each segregated floor plate. So by the placement of the stairs and the introduction of the light well, that kind of brought together just an overlap and overflow, and sense of space going on throughout the whole thing. That's just nice to make those connections, that it all feels like one house rather than individual floors.
Absolutely. So planning and building control, I guess the biggest concern we had with planning was, would we be allowed to put a roof garden up on the top floor? We had looked around the area, and some local houses in Ormond Square had wanted gardens or patios up on the first floor, and they had been rejected. So we actually engaged with the planners for pre-planning, and we actually had no major issues with this. The only kind of concern that they had was they put in as a planning condition that we had to pull the barrier at the front back a little bit, just to reduce any impact from the street level. You actually can't see the roof garden at all from street level unless you're really far away at the moment. And the other thing was that a planning condition was that they wanted a glass balustrade, which we felt would be quite onerous for domestic property in terms of cleaning and cost. So we put forward this image to show the black railing, which they accepted. In terms of building control, the client decided to opt in, so we're actually acting as assigned certifiers for the project. There has been no major issues with that to date. We're upgrading the house we're hoping for an A-rated energy standard, so everything is almost as new build.
Then I suppose just over the duration of the build, working with an existing house, we would always recommend to our clients that you would put a contingency aside, because until you fully open up everything, you can't really see what's going on, or there's always going to be some surprises. So this image here is just showing the difference on how the walls are essentially aren't straight at all.
There wasn't one straight wall in the building, but this was probably the area of the biggest discrepancy.
So the laser there is being shown from the ground floor up, and that's kind of just showing the discrepancies. Apart from that, on site we had done a good bit of opening up work, and apart from the back wall of the ground floor that was built at some point over the course of the building, it was in fairly bad condition, so that all went, and then we decided to replace the first floor as well. So when we went to actually level it, it just was going to take so much work that it would need to be replaced. But here again is the stairs, which is lined up with the stairs down below, which is just showing how much of a discrepancy there is across the building.
Yeah, because that's against the wall on the ground floor, so there's quite a bit.
Okay.
But that's our basic. I'm going to stop the share for a moment. That's our basic introduction. I'm just going to admit 2 more people into the conversation.
Yep, welcome to the people who arrived late. You haven't missed too much.
Just in time for the video.
We'll go back to through the slides at the end, hopefully, and people can ask specific questions about each one. I'm sure that they'll raise issues in their own. If anyone wants to shout out anything now, if you're having any issues or anything, shout out before we move on to the next phase. And don't forget to unmute yourselves. It looks like we can keep going.
Okay, that's great. So I'm going to share the screen again and play the video, and hopefully it'll work for everybody.
We're going to turn our video off because it seems to work better, the video.
Just to save as much broadband as possible.
So, welcome to Charles Street West. Here we are, just standing outside our Smithfield project. So, to start off, I'm just going to take you through the design decisions that we took on the front facade. The front facade is one of the original features in the house. So, originally there was pebble dash on the floors above, and what we did is we took this off to reveal the brickwork. Luckily enough, the brickwork is in good condition, so we're actually going to leave it in this kind of patchwork form, that it's kind of the pattern running across the front facade, and we're just going to make the necessary repairs where they're needed. The actual brickwork is a condition of the planning, so we'll have to get the final say from Dublin City Council.
Across the river.
Across the river here. But if they're not happy with leaving it as the way you see it now, what it will end up, it'll be tuck pointed, and the whole front facade will be repaired. I'll talk you through the shop front and the design decisions that we took along the way. So there was originally a timber beam in here that was rotten, so we ended up having to replace that. So we took that out and we put in a steel beam, which allowed us to open up the entire ground floor. So we have glass from the entire end wall the whole way back that's behind the screen. So the screen has to act for two purposes: for security, but then it also, you need to be able to escape from the bedroom that is on the ground floor. So this screen that's here is actually an opening section, so it can open the whole way, and the window can open, and then so it's a means of escape. The other panels along the facade, these can be easily removed for cleaning and maintenance.
We've upgraded the house energy-wise to new build standard throughout. So here on the ground floor, we've actually taken out all of the existing concrete floor. We've re-damp-proofed it, radon membrane, put in new insulation, and then we've topped it off with a concrete screed, as you can see. And there's underfloor heating pipes here. Also, we didn't want it to have too polished of a feel, so it's actually, this concrete finish is just going to be power floated and sealed, rather than the really kind of highly polished look. It was also really important for our client to have somewhere to store his bikes within the house. So we've lined this wall with birch ply, and we're going to hang brackets off it to store the bikes. Birch ply is a really good robust material. It can actually take a few beatings and scratches, but it also works really well with the minimalist aesthetic throughout. There is another living space to the back of the ground floor, which we're in now. It's more than likely going to be used as a home office now that working from home has become the norm. Originally, this space was really dark. It had no natural light. It led out onto a really small outdoor space, which had an outdoor toilet shed taking up half of the current patio space. So we've removed that, and we've put in these lovely floor to ceiling glass windows and doors, which are going to draw as much light in as possible. Also, at the back of the patio is a small plant room which houses the heat pump. This supplies clean energy to the entire dwelling. The ground floor bedroom opens out onto the street, as you can see here, so the metal screen provides a dual function of both privacy and security for those inside. It also acts as a fire escape, so you can see the window opens here, and then in an emergency, the screen opens out onto the street.
Our client came to us with a clear idea of the type of stairs that he wanted to put in, and he referenced The Curling Gallery by Joan Pawson. So as major fans of JP, we happily obliged and went for that aesthetic. The stairs is finished in French oak, as the rest of the floor is throughout the building. So we've gone for a very simple square profile stairs, and we have the shadow gaps that are in the rest of the building. They run along each riser and each tread of the stairs. Along the wall of each stairs we have 3 recessed wall lights, and then in the 2 enclosed stairs we also have a recessed LED light at the top of the stairs to guide you up the stairs. Okay, so here we are then on the first floor landing. We're after coming up the first staircase, which is quite enclosed, and at this point it's the first place where the house reveals itself and you get a glimpse of what's next to come. So we have the central void here that goes up to the roof light. So we're actually pretty much in the middle of the plan right now, but because of the roof light above, it's a really bright light-filled space. In terms of proportions, it's actually a narrow enough corridor that what we really wanted to do was emphasize again verticality. So again, how we've done that again is just by adding in the floor to ceiling doors. It just always draws your eye upwards, which is what we wanted to achieve. The floor to ceiling doors are all around the corridor. So into the master bedroom, we'll have a cupboard here with flush white doors and then another 2 doors here and here.
So within this house, we've put all the bedrooms and bathrooms onto the first floor. Originally, the kitchen is actually where we're standing right now, at the back of the house, but it's become the master bedroom. As you can see, we've taken out the back wall and we've put in these lovely ceiling height windows to draw in as much light as possible. You can see outside, you can see the site is really restricted. There's lots of really tall buildings overshadowing us. Really dense. I guess we're in the city centre, so we're just trying to bring as much light in as possible. Originally, there had been a bathroom here out on the flat roof, but this actually overshadowed the space even further, so we've actually put all the bathrooms back into the original floor print. So within the master bedroom, we have a full bank of storage across the rear wall, which floor to ceiling height wardrobe space, with the bed then will be against this wall. In order to keep the integrity of the original brick wall, we're keeping surfaces off it. So we have some floor plugs, and then we're also utilising the other walls just to make sure it's nice and clean. There's also an ensuite off this space, which is accessed by this full height sliding door, which slides nicely back into the wall. Again, when it's open, it all feels like one space, and we're keeping the brick wall intact. So at the front of the first floor here, we have the second bedroom. It's going to be finished out similarly to the rest with the oak floors. We have the exposed brick wall, the nice high ceilings, but we also, because it's at the front of the property, we have the heritage sliding sash timber windows also. So in a mid-terrace property like this, both space and natural light come at a premium. So as secondary spaces, we've put the bathrooms in the centre of the plan. So they're all quite tight and they don't have the luxury of natural light. In order to counter this, we've kept a really nice clean palette of square white tiles, white sanitary fittings, lots of mirrors, and then we've actually mitered the tile edges so there's no trims or anything like that, and we have built-in tiling storage as well throughout, just to keep a really nice clean white finish.
Originally, the living space was on the floor below, which actually has a generous floor to ceiling height. So when we come up here, when we move the living up to this top floor, the ceiling height is slightly lower. So to counteract that, what we wanted to do was just try and get as much height into the space as possible. So how we did that is we've exposed the ceilings. That just straight away gives a much bigger sense of space. The actual ceiling itself was existing. After the fire, a new roof went in, so there was actually very little work to do here, just apart from take down the plasterboard that was on the top. Here we are then in the kitchen. So the kitchen placed at the back of the house on the second floor. The main thing, I suppose, that defines this zone is this large floor to ceiling expansive window that opens up the back of the house entirely. It's the first time you start to get a glimpse of kind of little things in the background, like we can see the dome there of the 4 courts. The kitchen itself, all the units are actually going to be on this wall, so we'll just have one bank of units, all countertop, and then we'll have just overhead units above. The floor space is going to be kept clear, so it just allows more flexibility within this space, so it can grow and adapt with the needs of the client. So in the centre of the open plan living space, then this will become the dining space. So what kind of defines this area from the kitchen and the living space is that we have the void here and the balustrade with the connection to the landing down below. And then we also have a good connection with the roof light and the roof garden up above. At the front of the house here, this is going to be the living space. So the thing that kind of differentiates this space from the others on this floor is the introduction of this new roof light that we've placed above the ceiling joists. So as the sun moves around the building through the day, it's just going to create a really interesting light and shadow in the space.
So we're at the junction here between the existing building and the new part of the build, which are these stairs which lead us up to the roof level, which has the roof garden and some space inside as well. You can actually see the lines of the existing steel beams, and then we've put in a new beam running across, which actually holds up the roof light above. The difference between these stairs and the stairs on the lower levels is that they're actually open to the living space around them, and also this helps just flood the space with loads of natural light from above. So originally this space was conceived as just a really practical access route out onto the roof garden. It was going to be really small and tight, but once we realised the amount of light and the beautiful views out over the city, we decided to capitalise them and we increased it a little bit. So we actually have created a small nook here, which will be screened off with a metal screen like on the floor below. That's going to be able to fit a seat. Maybe it can become a really nice reading area for our client where you can just relax and take in the views. For us, it's really important to create different types of spaces within a building. So instead of just having all huge expansive spaces, sometimes the small nooks can become really important. So when we were designing this space, we felt that it was really important to frame the views out onto the city beyond, rather than compromising it by having another window out onto the roof garden. So we've actually put in a solid door, which leaves the outdoor space a surprise when you open it. Here we go.
Okay, so now we're up on the roof. This is the final part of the building. So this has always been an integral part of the design and part of the brief from the very start. The house itself, originally all we had on the ground floor was a little small yard that we showed you at the very start. So to add all of this new outdoor space to the building is a massive asset to any house based in the city centre. So we really considered the form of the new extension here. What we wanted to do was mirror the line of the stairs. So it just means from the street down below, it's set back and it's much more inconspicuous, but then it also allows for more light to get into this patio area that will be here. So it was really important to our client that the roof garden would feel like a garden and not a rooftop patio. So working with the existing roof structure, we opted for an extensive sedum green roof. So there'll be a sedum blanket here in front of the roof light, and then there'll be another area of sedum down towards the back of the roof. There's also going to be metal planters that will run along this railing here and this boundary and along the front boundary as well. So we're really happy with how the roof light has turned out. At the start and throughout the process, we weren't actually expecting to get a fixed pane of glass that would be this size without any structural fins in it. So it's just great that we were able to have such a clean finish on the roof light.
So that brings us to an end of our virtual site visit here in Smithfield. Thanks so much for watching. We hope that we've managed to convey an idea of the spaces in the project to you. Of course, you couldn't be here in the flesh, but we're happy to answer any questions that you might have now on Zoom.
That was fantastic. That was really brilliant. It's the first time seeing it for me. Get the drone footage. We definitely give Dermot Bannon a run for his money.
We have a lot of newfound respect for Dermot Bannon after attempting that. It was a lot more to it than we thought. But I hope that the quality was okay and that you could actually see the video.
Yeah, it was great. It
was good.
The videographer did a great job. That was Studio 8, is it?
Studio 8, yes. If anybody needs a video, Gary is fantastic.
Yeah, we'll definitely commission him for the next virtual site visit. But it was a brilliant project. Like, I really enjoyed seeing all the spaces and the way you described it brilliantly. I'm sure everyone has questions. There's a few questions coming in already. I thought I might get the ball rolling by asking my own question first.
Great.
So I'm Ronan Kenny from the AAI, and everyone can introduce themselves so we know we're all friendly here, we're all members. So you mentioned at the start that there was a shop front, and I wondered, first of all, was there a shop there before? And secondly, did you need to apply for change of permission for the planning application?
So when our client bought it, the image was as per the first photo, so it wasn't a beautiful shopfront in any way. It had most recently been used by NCAD students. When he bought the property, it was all bought as residential. It was a bit of a grey area, but when we consulted Dublin City Council and it didn't need a technical change of use, we couldn't find any records of like the original pre-fire shopfront. So that's why we took we just decided to do a contemporary shopfront on it rather than a kind of pastiche.
Yeah, there was no planning records of it as well, but it had always, or from what the people in the community have told us, it was always used as a shopfront and had a couple of different uses. I think it was like a general store at one point, to the Spice Burger shop, or I'm not sure if it was a shop or just they just manufactured them there and then sold them out. But I suppose the building itself probably has quite a story to tell, I'd imagine.
Yeah, and it's very rare to see a staircase go all the way to the roof and to have people use the rooftop. You see that in other major cities. So I'm getting a lot of questions in here about fire rating in general. Do you want to just talk about that in terms of the stairs and everything else?
Yeah, so originally the bedrooms had all been on the second floor. So it actually helped with fire as well that we moved them down to the first floor and the ground floor, of course. And then everything is like we've fire protected it. So we've put in like double slabbing between the floors. Obviously, it's all open plan for the living spaces, but our escape distances were okay to get past the fire. And then all of the kind of separate rooms, all like are kind of fire sealed off.
And for the roof escape, was there anything to do with the Dublin Fire Brigade? I know in New York you have to be able to get a ladder up there.
Yeah, so it's within, I think, the height to get a ladder up, and because it has access from the street, it's okay as well.
Great. If anyone wants to shout out a question, you can unmute yourself. Otherwise, we'll go to the list. Oh, I see Claudia has one.
No, I think I was just going to say, Ronan, there's a list of questions there if you want to start into them.
Yeah, so we have one from Conor McGowan. Do you want to ask it yourself or do you want me to read it out? He says, were the 6/6s and the potential tuck pointing to satisfy the heritage officer?
It wasn't actually at all. We had originally wanted to put in a contemporary just single pane because the existing windows that were in there were just single pane aluminium windows. So there was no evidence of it, but the client was quite keen to put back in sash windows and kind of respect the heritage of the building. And they were kind of the only thing that was remaining were the window openings. So that's where that came from.
Also, the project, it's not a protected structure. It's zoned conservation residential rather than just residential. But I think we're happy with it. We've worked with Derg Joinery to try and get as close of a replica as we could to what would have been there originally. So we're pleased with the result.
Great, yes, so it's client-led. We have a question from Laura. I see you've unmuted yourself. You want to ask?
Yeah. Hi there. Congratulations. Beautiful work. Lovely spaces you've created. Really ingenious. Sorry, as I say, if I missed it, because you might have said something I missed, but I just wondered how you got on with the stairs going up. It's kind of, is it 4-story, really, if you include your nook at the top? And just, anytime I look at anything, you've got to have, self-closing doors and compartmentalize, yourself, all of the fire regs properly. So I know it's probably a terribly boring question, but I suppose it's more like it's kind of key to opening up buildings like this and how one addresses those. So I just wondered, did you have anything to say on that?
Yeah, well, that was what we were saying. Like the whole ground floor is compartmentalized from the rest of the building, and then
Okay, I missed that. Sorry. Yeah.
We have fire doors throughout, and at the top of the first set of stairs as well, there's a fire door there as well.
Okay.
It's a sliding fire door. So I suppose technically on the top floor there is no habitable space apart from the actual roof garden is a habitable roof garden, but it is a landing at the top of the stairs. In reality, I don't know if we conveyed how big it is, but it kind of grew slightly when we got on site, but like you'd max kind of fit a chair at it. It's not really a habitable space.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. If it's just that piece, it's your access route.
It is the access, So it's not really a room that's up there, even though it might be used to sit and read a book, possibly.
It isn't a habitable room by its size or whatever.
Well, it's just the utility that's like is the actual room that's screened off, and then there's the other space. And I guess we've tried to minimize risk by keeping all the bedrooms as low as possible. So I guess
we've only ever improved the fire rating of the building by the work that we've done. We've significantly improved it, I suppose.
There were some beautiful barred windows on the second floor prior to us starting on site. We should have included those. But it is an issue, I guess, with those Georgian buildings as to how we can, design safely for the future.
Yeah. Was the sliding fire door very expensive?
They're expensive enough, They're
probably.
I think are they 1,500 maybe expat?
Okay, but it allowed you to open up the whole house, so yeah, it's worth it in that sense. Yeah. Thanks very much. Yeah.
No problem. Thank you.
I think someone else has their microphone unmuted. Anna Louise, do you want to jump in? Or I can
we
take
can go through these if you want.
What dimension is the roof glazing?
So I think it's 3.5 meters. I'd have to look it up exactly. It's
I'm going to say, is it 2 meters across?
It's 2.5 meters across, but I think slightly over 3 meters in length on the diagonal, or not the diagonal, like on the slope side.
Did it have to be crane lifted in place?
It did,
Yeah, I assume so. That is very impressive, Gary.
But obviously we had to get the right weather, so it was a huge relief when it finally came in.
So we craned both the roof light at the front as well, because that is actually quite a long piece of glass as well.
And the fixed pane in the kitchen was craned over also.
Okay.
And was that glass made in Ireland, or was it bigger pieces?
It was Perry glass made it.
Okay. Triple glazed, or?
Yeah, so the glass itself was about...
The roof lights are double glazed just to do with the weight of them, but the rear kitchen one is triple glazed.
But they're quite thick. They're about, it was 60 mil or so. 30 mil was the actual thickness of the roof light glass. So it's quite sizable.
And we had a question about how are you going to achieve the A energy rating?
Yeah, so actually I don't know that we described that properly. So what we have done is we've put in new floors underneath. So we have a lot of insulation, rigid insulation under the concrete floor. Then we have dry lined the front wall and the party wall.
With the stairs on, because that's an external wall in part. And then, so the only part of the house that hasn't been insulated is the brick wall. Yeah.
So I see a question here from Robert Burke. The insulation, the internal wall insulation. So what we've done is we've put DPM, then battens, then we have rigid wall insulation, which has plasterboard. And then we have in the roof part, around the roof light, I think there's
250 mil of rock wool.
or 300.
And
yeah.
then it's dry lined as well done on the inside to just kind of counteract any types of cold bridges that would come through the timber.
And also we have a heat pump providing all of the heat to the property except for the roof lights. Everything else is triple glazed. So I hope that answers the A energy rating question. Please, you can just keep typing if there's something that you're not sure about. ODKM, hello. Did you need to underpin the party walls? No, we did. We carried out a structural survey beforehand, and the neighbours on both sides actually let us into their properties to do a structural survey as well. And luckily, we didn't need to carry out any underpinning works.
We also did a study on the services as well beforehand as well, just because it was such an old house, to see what was there and how the sewer, the foul water system was working as well, but it was working okay. There was possibly a basement in it in the past, but it has been filled in over time. Next door there is a basement, but in ours there wasn't. So
yeah, so we worked with Butler's contractors, and they were actually really great to work with. They were really careful. So at the start, you know, we just really carefully did, you know, the opening up works just to make sure that everything would be okay. And luckily it was. I don't know, I don't think there's any more questions on the list. So if anybody else has any, please feel free.
Hi guys.
I had one more. Oh, go
Andrew
ahead, Andrew.
Here. Can I ask a question?
Hello, yes, of course.
Just your comment on the builders. When you have a project like that, which I suppose a large builder would consider that to be a small project, but when you're tendering for a project like that, which is maybe it's not huge in scale, but at the same time you want a builder that's going to be able to cope with all of the difficulties of the project. How do you go about tendering for something like that? Do you target a builder who's slightly bigger, and so that they're actually building a little bit smaller than they normally would, or do you already have a small builder in mind?
Yeah.
Could you just talk to that a little bit?
Of course. I'm sure all of the other architects who are in the conversation will agree that it can be quite challenging to get the right builder for the right job. We were lucky that we had a short list of contractors that we were confident could deliver on the kind of high specification elements of the project. So we tendered to just maybe, I think, was it 3 or 4. So they were all kind of on the cusp that they're domestic builders, but the quality of their work was like defined by other projects that they had completed. So we were confident that they would be able to be up for the task.
I think another point on that as well is the fact that the site is so restricted, and in the city centre, we wanted somebody who would have, I suppose, experience working in the city centre. So you're probably looking for a slightly larger builder who can cope with that. And then I suppose...
Yeah, like, and that they have credentials, that, you know, they have worked with heritage buildings, that their health and safety is up to scratch and all of that, especially working on a city centre site. It's much higher risk than if you were in a rural setting.
Had you worked with that particular builder before?
We actually hadn't worked with them before.
But so what we do generally is we'll put forward builders that we're happy to work with, and then ask the client always as well to go and work with, or go put forward some people they'd like to work with as well. And Jerry from Butler's had come highly recommended, and he had actually been recommended to us beforehand as well. And
we also knew some other architects who had worked with him, and we were really happy with the work on those projects visually anyways, and they gave their recommendation. So I guess a recommendation is worth a lot in this industry. You don't give them lightly.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
No problem, thank you.
How did the builder cope with the COVID situation? Did you have to stop site works for a period?
Yeah, so we were shut down for almost 2 months. The biggest impact was actually the windows. The windows had started to be installed the week of lockdown, so then we were left with a building that was half open, and then there was a delay in the glass as well. So we're probably
we were due to finish the end of April, but
so it's going to be 4 months really over.
So we were obviously closed down for the period that everybody had to close down, and then also everybody, I'm sure, has experienced that there's been delays getting things, like there was delays getting radiators, which are a certain type of radiator that are coming in to work with the heat pump as well, and things like that. There's just small things that have delayed the whole process, but we're kind of hoping to be finished
nearly there.
fairly soon.
I see another question from Danielle. Were there budget restrictions that particularly impacted the outcome of the design? So yes, I would say it wasn't a huge budget. I think the final budget is coming in at approximately €2,000 per metre square. So within that, things like the green roof, originally the client would have loved to have an intensive green roof. I may have got those mixed up, but the lighter one is the sedum. So in order to keep the existing roof structure with just one extra beam, we went for that option. And then, of course, the beams that were existing throughout the house, we had to keep those. So it was a real challenge to get the stairs to work within those. So I guess they were the kind of two main things that...
We tried to work with what we had in terms of the structure to try and keep the budget down. There wasn't very much that we needed to keep, but like the structure was the main thing that we tried to keep. Like there was structure all through the floors and then on the back wall as well. So we just worked around that. I'm probably more or less repeating what Niamh said there. But
can I ask you about the client? What kind of what were their needs in terms of, is it a family home, or are they single, or are they couples sharing?
It is a single person in their mid-30s, and their needs were that they wanted somewhere that they could grow, and that they'd ideally, so that they'd have like a spare room. I think their best friend wants to take it. We'd probably throw ourselves in that. I think it'll be a really nice place to live. But so it wasn't like a family home it was never intended to be that. It was a kind of a young working professionals.
But it is a home that can kind of grow with his needs as they will change. He was kind of very much wanted to future-proof what would be done and try and do it in one go, I suppose, so that it's going to be able to change and adapt as his needs adapt as well. I suppose, like even the ground floor, it's probably going to become a home office now, and it was a second living space, but obviously things do change, so you have to kind of try and allow for that in the design.
Great. Do we have one or two more questions, and then we'll finish up?
Another one from me, sorry. You didn't come across any archaeology in that location, no?
No, and no, we actually didn't at all. We're lucky that we have one of the best Irish archaeologists is in the office below us, Frank Moyles. So no, I think
we didn't have to go digging though either. We actually really didn't disturb the ground at all, really, because apart from digging out the floor, there was actually no new foundations at all. So we didn't really go disturbing the ground. So there could be stuff down there, but we didn't have to go digging to find out. And there was no conditions or anything like that within the planning that we would need to get an archaeologist. So it just didn't come up, to be honest.
Great presentation, Niamh and Declan. Question on the roof light. It's a very clever positioning to kind of bring light into the plan. Do you find that you do that a lot through your projects?
Yes, I would say actually, yeah, we like to, I guess Ireland is not the sunniest of climes, so we're trying to squeeze in a little bit of daylight wherever we can. So yeah, we find that getting top light is a really great way that you can, for less glass, you get more light, basically.
Yeah, it's kind of a cheap enough solution, because obviously a fixed pane roof light, they're quite inexpensive, I suppose, generally, in comparison to, like, say, an opening section of a large sliding door or something like that. Yeah, actually, I think probably it is a thing that we generally would try and get into most of our projects, is a roof light. Never really thought of it like that, but yeah, it would be always something we would consider. And it also, I suppose, it always brings a sense of space, because it always draws your eye up, and generally we would try and get some verticality when you're adding a roof light if you can.
Yeah, I noticed that there's a really clever one just at the front of the house as well. Yeah, it's very good.
The one at the front of the house actually worked out really well, even just from a detailing point of view, because we had to step back the roof garden on the roof. So the roof light actually means that we didn't have to do like a parapet and then a little bit of flat and then like a build kind of two separate roofs. So that was a lucky accident, because we had put in the roof light anyways, but it worked out.
Yeah, the front is actually quite overshadowed by the new commercial building that's across the road. And actually you do get like a lot of light that actually reflects off their glass back into the building. But we kind of wanted that we would get some direct sunlight into the front end of the house upstairs as well. So that's another reason why we did the roof light. But as Niamh said, it grew. Originally it was only going to be like 500 mil wide, and now when you include the insulation, everything gets a little bit smaller, but it's 1500 wide.
Exactly.
The frame.
I see a question here from Michael Kavanagh about the front facade. Yes, that it could be a Dutch Billy rather than early Georgian. It could be. Our client had a good relationship with the Georgian Civic Trust, so that's where we got the early Georgian from. But we stand to be corrected. It could be Dutch Billy. It
could be Dutch Billy, yeah. And actually, on the facade, there's a couple of different types of brick as well. So it possibly was Dutch Billy, and then got changed into early Georgian in aesthetic, because I know that definitely happened a lot.
Great. We'll give a couple seconds silence in case anyone strikes up the courage. I just want to remind people that if you do need a CPD, you are eligible for one from this, so please do email us and we'll send you a receipt. And also, yeah, this is our last event of the calendar year for the AI 2019-2020. Thank you very much for showing us how it's done in terms of online events. I'm sure we'll have to do more like this in the new year, in the new calendar year. So really set the bar high for the AAI online events. Thanks so much, Niamh and Declan.
Well, thank you for having us. Yeah. It's been really enjoyable, and thanks for everybody for coming and taking part. I hope that it was as enjoyable for you as it was for us.
Definitely pushed us out of our comfort zone, and we now realise that we say "so" an awful lot more than we thought we did. But it's a very Irish thing, I think.
It was very succinct, and I hope that you get the videographer back on completion to do a run through again, and you might even make a TV show out of it.
Yeah. He's been documenting the whole process, so yeah, we're looking forward to seeing the final result, because he's so talented. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
We might have to accept video for the AI awards next year.
Hopefully it'll be finished by then and we'll be happy.
Fingers crossed.
Absolutely. Well, thank you everybody for your lovely comments.
Very much,
yeah, thanks guys.
Thanks a lot. That was great.
Thanks, Claudia.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye everybody. Thank you.
Bye.